I show you three perfumes. One is from Dior, one is from Amouage, and one is a fragrance that smells very similar to a famous Dior or Creed perfume, but cost a fraction of the price. Now I ask you which one is better. Most people will immediately say obviously the expensive one. But here is the problem. Price doesn't tell you whether a perfume is designer, niche or clone. But how did these three worlds develop? Why did designer perfumery become so powerful? Where did niche perfumery come from? And where did the modern cologne fragrance industry explode? More importantly, if you are building a fragrance collection, where should you spend your money? Let's understand all of this from the beginning. Hello everyone, my name is Manoj Singh. Welcome to Fragrance Wisdom. Let's start today's episode. Let's start with designer. When fragrance enthusiasts say designer perfume, they're generally talking about fragrance released under established fashion, luxury, cosmetic, or lifestyle brand. For example, Dior, Chanel, YSL, Giorgio Armani, Prada, Gucci, Versace, Givenchy. The important thing is the perfume is a part of a large brand universe. For example, Dior doesn't exist only because of perfume. It has fashion, cosmetic, accessories and other luxury products. The fragrance become another way for the consumer to enter that brand universe. And this is one of the most important difference between traditional designer and niche perfumery. To understand designer fragrance, we need to go back to the early 20th century. Before modern designer perfumery, perfume houses and fashion houses were more clearly separated. But things began changing. One of the most important milestone was Chanel No. 5. Coco Chanel introduced Chanel No. 5 in 1921, created by perfumer Ernest Bois. This was an important moment because fragrance became strongly connected with a fashion designer identity. Chanel wasn't simply selling a pleasant smelling liquid, it was selling an image, lifestyle and identity. And that idea became incredibly powerful. Soon other fashion houses realized if people can't afford our outer clothing, perhaps they can still buy our fragrance. And this changed the economics of luxury. A person who couldn't spend thousands on outer could potentially buy a bottle of perfume. So fragrance became something incredibly interesting, affordable access to luxury branding. Then we get to another major milestone, Miss Dior, launched in 1947. Dior expanded the connection between fashion and fragrance even further, and over the following decades, brands such as YSL, Givenchy, Chanel, Dior, Gucci, Armani, Versace built powerful fragrance portfolios. The model became extremely successful. The fashion brand created the identity. A professional perfumer creates the fragrance. A fragrance company or manufacturing partner handles large scale production. The brand markets it globally and retailers distribute it through department store, perfume shop, airport, duty free, online stores, brand boutiques. This is essentially the designer fragrance machine. Now let's enter the more confusing world, niche perfumery. The word niche essentially refers to a specialized segment. Traditionally, niche perfume generally focus on a narrower audience rather than trying to appeal to everyone. Historically, niche brands emphasize specialized distribution, smaller audience, artistic freedom, distinctive concepts, strong house identity, more unusual composition, greater focus on fragrance as the primary product. But there is an important historical twist. People sometimes think niche perfume is a modern invention. Actually, the earliest perfume houses were in some way niche-like. Before fragrance became a mass-market luxury product, perfume houses often operate on much smaller scale. They had their own identities, specialist customer and selective distribution. So modern niche perfumery can almost be seen as a return to some older ideas. The modern niche movement, however, really gained momentum in the second half of the 20th century. One of the most important names here is La Artisan Perfumer. founded in 1976 by Jean-Francois Lavoisier. It is widely regarded as one of the pioneers of modern niche perfumery. The idea was fundamentally different from the mainstream fashion house model. Instead of saying, "Here is our fashion brand, now let's create a perfume," the fragrance itself became the main attraction. Another important name is Diptyque. The company was founded in Paris in 1961 and initially became known for decorative objects and scented candles before moving to personal fragrance. Then came houses such as Annick Gautel, Parfum de Nicolas, Serge Lutens, Frédéric Malle, Le Labo, Manson Francis Courtisan by Kilian Amouage, Jerzov, Nishane, and the niche universe continued expanding. Now we arrived at the category that create the most argument online, clone perfumes. You may also hear dupe, inspired by, alternatives, impression, twist, similar fragrance, replica. These terms aren't always legal or commercially identical, so we should be very careful with terminology. But in everyday fragrance discussion, a clone generally means a fragrance designed to smell sustainably similar to another fragrance. For example, a company sees that a particular fragrance has become extremely popular. A customer loves its DNA, but the original costs 15,000. The company creates a fragrance designed to provide a similar overall experience for 1500 or 2000 rupees. That is what consumers commonly call a clone or inspired by fragrance. Here is another interesting point. The idea of creating fragrance inspired by successful scent isn't entirely new. Whenever a fragrance becomes commercially successful, other companies have incentive to offer alternatives. But the modern cologne market exploded because of several factors, like global e-commerce. A customer in India can discover a fragrance from UAE, America, or the UK within seconds. Social media like YouTube, Instagram, and TikTok made fragrance comparison extremely popular. Fragrance communities where people discuss about fragrance, this smell like Aventer, this smell like Suage, and suddenly consumers became very interested in fragrance DNA. This is one of the most important point in the entire video. The old definition where designer means mainstream, niche means independent, clone means cheap is becoming increasingly inaccurate because major luxury groups have acquired niche brands. For example, Estée Lauder acquired Jo Malone London in 1999 and later acquired brands including Le Labo and additional de Parfum. LVMH acquired a majority stake in Maison Francis Courtisan in 2017. As a result, some brands that began as niche now have much wider distribution and large corporate ownership. So today, niche is not simply about ownership and is not simply about price. So which one should you buy? If you are a beginner, start with designer and affordable fragrances. If you want something unusual, explore niche. If you love an expensive fragrance but can't justify the price, try a good clone or inspired by alternative. If you are a collector, don't limit yourself to one category. Explore everything. Because the goal of collecting perfumes shouldn't be how expensive is my collection, it should be how much do I understand about fragrance. And that's the real difference between designer, niche and clone perfumes. Three categories, three different philosophies and a history that is much more complicated than simply expensive versus niche. If this video helped you to understand the fragrance industry a little bit better, don't forget to like this video and subscribe to Fragrance Wisdom. And tell me in the comment, are you a designer person, a niche lover, or do you prefer affordable clones? And more importantly, what is the best clone you have ever smelled? This is Fragrance Wisdom, where we go beyond reviews into the world of fragrance wisdom.